Chapter 1, True Martial Immortal. In the true martial realm, the sound of battle cries shook the heavens, smoke and fire billowed into the sky, and the flames of war spread everywhere. In the air, two great factions faced each other. One side was as numerous as ants but hesitant, seemingly wary of their opponents. 10 marshals stood at the forefront, each frowning. The leading commander, William Storm, held the William Storm blade in his hand, his golden hair flowing down to his back, fluttering in the wind. On the other side, their numbers were relatively smaller, but each individual stood tall like a war god. They bore no weapons, no visible energy, appearing like ordinary martial artists. Yet their eyes were resolute and cold, as if everything before them was unrelated to them. Their auras were nearly identical, as they formed a specific formation in the air. The king of the true martial realm, Jonathan Eastwood, stood upright in the sky, like a divine being descending from the heavens, gazing down at the earth.
Unexpected, isn't it, Jonathan Eastwood? Even your true martial battle clan faces a day when outsiders invade to annihilate your people.
William Storm's laughter echoed throughout the true martial realm.
Who dares to trespass upon true martial? Kill!
Jonathan Eastwood uttered a brief command and struck. As the word kill fell, mountains crumbled, the earth split, rivers reversed, and oceans trembled. The previously motionless figures suddenly came alive like war gods, their fierce aura erupting in an instant. The great battle commenced. In the air, the clash between Jonathan Eastwood and William Storm was ferocious. William Storm raised his blade before his chest, pointed 2 fingers skyward, and shouted,
"Heavenly Mirror!"
Instantly, his figure split into countless images, forming a spherical encirclement around Jonathan Eastwood. Jonathan Eastwood coldly surveyed his surroundings.
Before true martial, all divine abilities are mere illusions. Break!
Jonathan Eastwood unleashed a single punch, a torrent of power surging forth. With one strike, accompanied by boundless black lightning, he shattered a series of illusions. A large gap appeared in the spherical encirclement. Spinning around, he delivered a powerful sidekick, instantly breaking the sphere apart. Yet all the shadowy figures forming the sphere, still under William Storm's control, charged toward Jonathan Eastwood. The terrifying shockwaves leveled mountain ranges thousands of miles away. Jonathan Eastwood roared skyward, his hands rapidly forming seals as he retreated. Suddenly, he thrust his palms forward, and a colossal dragon emerged from the seals, carrying boundless black lightning as it surged toward the illusions. The dragon's roar shook the heavens and the earth. Those with weaker cultivation below were struck by the sound waves, their souls obliterated, vanishing from the land. William Storm was enraged. Everyone knew that while the true martial realm had fewer people, their combat power was unparalleled. Jonathan Eastwood's actions were clearly a massacre of cultivation world's forces.
Boom!
The dragon collided with the illusions, the space shattered, and the force spilled into another dimension. If not for this, the true martial realm would have been destroyed by this single blow. William Storm and Jonathan Eastwood entered the alternate dimension. A golden light orb and an ordinary figure clashed repeatedly, millions of exchanges completed in the blink of an eye. Below, cultivation world cultivators surrounded the disciples of the true martial realm, with waves of power rippling everywhere. The ground was repeatedly shattered, creating massive craters. If not for the countless restrictions in the true martial realm, this world would have been destroyed countless times over. The disciples of the true martial realm, all bloodied, stood firm like asuras. The cultivation world forces, facing beings akin to death gods, were utterly powerless. However, leveraging their numerical advantage and various magical treasures, cultivation world managed to fight the true martial realm to a standstill. The battle raged on for 7 days and 7 nights, with no one knowing the ultimate outcome.
This battle would later be called the Seven Martial War. Some say all 108 members of the true martial battle clan perished, and the true martial realm vanished. Others claim the true martial realm remained undefeated, and to preserve their homeland, the heroic spirits of the battle clan sacrificed their lives to teleport the true martial realm to another world. Since all 10 marshals of the cultivation faction perished and nearly all their disciples were annihilated, only the commander William Storm escaped with a small remnant of his forces, disappearing from the world thereafter. Heavenly Origin Continent, on the sandy shore of a massive, desolate island thousands of miles off the east side, a young man lay sprawled out in the shape of the Chinese character Big. As the sun set, half of it was obscured by towering mountains, and the twilight painted the sea red. Flocks of seabirds chirped melodiously over the ocean. "Ah, where is this place?" The young man woke up, gently rubbing his head, and began observing his surroundings. Rows of coconut trees stretched endlessly, with large, round coconuts hanging in clusters from the treetops, making his mouth water. Gentle waves lapped against the sandy beach, and the world seemed utterly serene. "Wow, these coconuts are huge!" The young man stood up and marveled at the enormous coconuts. Then, noticing his disheveled appearance, he shook his head. "Huh? Jade pendant, Kevin Schuyler. Is my name Kevin Schuyler?" Searching his body, he discovered a jade pendant, a saber, and a strange map with peculiar symbols inscribed on it. The saber was entirely black, devoid of any gleam, resembling a Japanese katana, but slightly broader. Its hilt was thinner at the grip. Kevin Schuyler tested it by striking a tree, but found it to be just like an ordinary blade, only heavier and darker. Finding nothing extraordinary about it, he sheathed the saber, deciding to keep it since it was one of the few possessions he had. Stowing away the map securely, Kevin Schuyler ventured into the forest. Climbing up a tree, he plucked 2 coconuts and drank their contents greedily. This was a primeval forest, dense with vegetation, and ancient trees with trunks 5 or 6 meters in diameter, requiring 10 adults to encircle them, stood as a testament to how rarely humans had visited this place. Deer and wild rabbits roamed fearlessly, while the calls of gibbons and chirping birds filled the air, creating a truly natural scene. Kevin Schuyler continued forward when suddenly, a massive python lunged from the nearby bushes. Its body was as thick as a barrel, and its forked tongue, nearly half a meter long, flickered menacingly. Standing upright, the snake's height reached 3 meters. Kevin Schuyler immediately became alert, surprised at how calm he felt. A regular person would have collapsed in fear by now. Suddenly, Kevin felt a surge of energy rising from his dantian. With a slight focus, the energy seemed to gather in his palms. The giant python, with eyes as large as bowls, blinked without showing any intention to attack. Seeing this, Kevin Schuyler bowed slightly and said with a grin, "Greetings, Brother Python. I'm new here. Please take care of me." The massive python tilted its head slightly, then slithered away, its enormous body rumbling past like a train. Kevin Schuyler wiped the sweat from his forehead as the energy concentrated in his palms returned to his dantian. What was that? Kevin Schuyler closed his eyes, calming his mind to sense the mysterious power within him. With a slight exertion, the energy began circulating through his body. Huh? When Kevin Schuyler focused his mind, he discovered an almost tangible sensation. Even with his eyes closed, he could see his body and even his internal structure. In his dantian, there was a liquid-like spherical mass. What on earth was that? My goodness! Who could tolerate having a sphere growing inside their abdomen? Kevin Schuyler immediately tried to suppress it with his mind, but as soon as he touched it, the sphere emitted a dazzling light. An endless stream of energy flooded his body. Kevin Schuyler felt immense power coursing through him. So this was the source of his strength. Overjoyed, Kevin Schuyler opened his eyes. Channeling the energy into his palms, he noticed his hands glowing faintly. Gradually, the sphere in his dantian shrank. Taking advantage of the moment, Kevin Schuyler swung his saber at a towering tree with a 5-meter diameter. Whoosh! My goodness! The giant tree was severed cleanly in half, and not just that, an area a meter ahead was leveled entirely. Kevin Schuyler was astonished. It seemed he was quite powerful after all. True martial, undying, undying. At that moment, a faint voice echoed. Who's there? Kevin Schuyler, slightly fatigued from his earlier strike, moved toward the source of the voice. After traversing several dense forested areas, he stumbled upon a circular clearing with a diameter of at least 100 meters. Not a single tree stood within the clearing, only grass. In the midst of this dense forest, such a place seemed almost surreal. Wait, what was that? At the center of the clearing stood a simple straw hut, utterly ordinary in appearance. Without hesitation, Kevin Schuyler dashed toward the hut. The voice had come from within. When he was about 10 meters away from the hut, Kevin Schuyler suddenly felt as though he had stepped into a quagmire. His movements became sluggish and labored. Struggling to take a few more steps, he realized he could not advance any further. Moreover, an invisible pressure emanated faintly from the hut, a natural force that seemed effortless yet overwhelming. Kevin Schuyler summoned his strength, attempting to push forward. Boom! A figure burst through the door of the hut, striking Kevin Schuyler squarely in the chest with a single palm. He was sent flying backward, nearly spitting blood. Quickly regaining his composure, Kevin Schuyler focused his energy to heal the injury in his chest. However, as soon as he steadied himself, he was utterly shocked. Standing before him was someone who looked exactly like him, not just in appearance, but even in clothing. The only difference? This doppelganger did not carry a black blade. Why? Kevin Schuyler was furious and shouted, "Who are you?" The opponent did not respond, merely letting out a cold snort before charging forward like lightning. Their fist clenched, carrying a faint purple glow, struck towards Kevin Schuyler. Startled, Kevin Schuyler stepped back, channeling all his strength into his right fist. After retreating one step, he countered with a punch aimed at the mysterious figure. Boom! A powerful collision ensued. Kevin Schuyler staggered back more than 10 steps, while the opponent showed no signs of retreating, instead pressing forward. Kevin Schuyler was infuriated to the extreme. The opponent inexplicably bore an exact resemblance to him, and attacked without uttering a single word, truly unsettling. However, as Kevin Schuyler tried to gather his strength, he noticed the energy orb in his dantian had shrunk, making it increasingly difficult to harness his power. Damn it! While Kevin Schuyler was contemplating his next move, the ordinary black blade at his side began to tremble, as if it wanted to escape its sheath. You want to come out? Kevin Schuyler gripped it tightly and drew it out. The black blade emitted a dazzling light. The once clear blue sky turned dark in an instant, black clouds gathered, lightning tore through the heavens, fierce winds howled, and the ground quaked. Seeing this, Kevin Schuyler poured his energy into the black blade and slashed toward the mysterious figure. The blade sliced through the air with an unstoppable force. The mysterious figure frowned, forming hand seals with both hands, summoning a long sword composed entirely of radiant light. As the light sword emerged, a vast expanse of white light engulfed the entire grassy field. Clang! Blade and sword clashed, sending sparks flying in all directions. The darkened sky was lit up brilliantly. Amidst the deafening thunder, the two exchanged blows several times. Kevin Schuyler realized that he had lost control. It was no longer him wielding the blade, but the blade controlling him. After a prolonged battle, the energy orb within Kevin Schuyler completely vanished, and the light sword of the mysterious figure dimmed significantly. Kevin Schuyler spat out a mouthful of blood, astonished by the black blade's immense power. Despite its unassuming appearance, it was terrifyingly potent. Furthermore, the light sword left no trace on it, no matter how many times it struck. "Who exactly are you?" Though spitting blood, Kevin Schuyler was not gravely injured. "Why do you look exactly like me?" Understanding that the mysterious figure would not answer, Kevin Schuyler wasted no more words. He immediately unleashed a domineering mid-air slash. The 5-meter radius around him was enveloped in blade energy. The mysterious figure swung their sword to block, engaging in another head-on collision. This time, however, the mysterious figure could no longer withstand the force, being sent flying backward, coughing up a large mouthful of blood before disintegrating into specks of light and vanishing. Kevin Schuyler did not fare much better. Regaining his composure, he sheathed the blade and touched its hilt. "From now on, I'll call you Heaven-born Fang. You're one of the few possessions I have, but why have you returned to your normal form now? I really don't understand." Kevin Schuyler gently stroked Heaven-born Fang, murmuring to himself, "True martial eternal." At this moment, the summoning voice echoed again. Kevin Schuyler walked toward the small wooden house, realizing that the resistance he had felt earlier had disappeared. He approached, pushed open the wooden door. Creak, the door creaked open. Inside, everything appeared ordinary. At the center of the room stood a wooden table, and on it lay a book emitting a faint glow. Aside from that, there was nothing else. Kevin Schuyler approached the table. "True martial?" The book's cover bore only these 2 words. But where was the voice coming from? With curiosity, Kevin Schuyler opened the book. The moment it was opened, the entire book burst into radiant light, illuminating the modest hut with a golden brilliance. Kevin Schuyler suddenly felt as if he had been transported to another world, a boundless darkness, devoid of anything. In the distance, a single point of light emerged. Oh, it was an old man walking toward him. With each step, he seemed to traverse thousands of miles. His hair was white as snow, his complexion youthful and rosy, like that of a child. Despite his silver hair and beard, his eyes gleamed with sharp clarity, and his skin emitted a faint glow. While the old man's expression was kind, he exuded an overwhelming aura of authority, compelling one to kneel in reverence. Kevin Schuyler stood in awe before clasping his hands in respect. "This humble one greets the senior." The old man took another step forward, now standing directly before Kevin. Placing his right hand on Kevin's forehead, he closed his eyes briefly before speaking. "Not bad. To conquer oneself, this is the path of true martial. To unify all realms, this is the destiny of true martial. To live with the heavens and perish with the earth, this is the essence of true martial." Kevin Schuyler gazed at the old man in confusion. It wasn't that he didn't want to move. Rather, he found himself utterly unable to. The old man nodded slightly, then extended his right index finger, tapping lightly. A series of markings appeared in Kevin Schuyler's consciousness. It turned out that the golden orb hidden within his dantian was called primordial essence. When transformed into internal energy, it could amplify one's strength by tens of thousands of times. Spiritual energy, when materialized, became divine sense, which at its peak could perceive across vast distances. By using one's divine sense to guide the circulation of primordial essence within the body, it could heal internal injuries, open blocked meridians, and even absorb the essence of heaven and earth to replenish the primordial essence. At the highest levels, one could go thousands of years without eating. If absorption speed reached a certain threshold, it could sustain prolonged combat. Kevin Schuyler focused inwardly on his dantian and discovered 2 purple orbs already present. The original golden orb had also reappeared. So quickly, Kevin Schuyler was astonished. The two purple orbs seemed to hide two characters, but no matter how hard Kevin Skylar tried with his divine sense, he could not discern them. When Kevin Skylar withdrew his divine sense, the old man had vanished. The book, too, was gone, leaving only its cover. On it, two golden words glowed brilliantly. True Martial. Kevin Skylar's divine sense could feel an immense power hidden within those two words. What did true martial truly mean? Kevin Skylar was filled with questions. Chapter 2, The First Companion. Kevin Skylar carried his doubts as he left the grassy field and the thatched hut, concealing two radiant golden characters. At that very moment, a loud noise erupted from the other side of the island, followed by a thunderous dragon roar echoing from the sea, shaking the heavens and earth. Kevin Skylar covered his ears, but still staggered from the vibrations. He quickly channeled his inner energy to shield himself, feeling slightly better. From the sea, a dark cloud approached. No, it was dragons. My goodness, so many dragons, filling the sky and casting a massive shadow while roaring deafeningly. Kevin Skylar was stunned. He had never seen such a scene before. These were Western dragons, with enormous wings and massive bodies exuding an innate sense of menace, along with various strange and unique dragons. The colossal shadow passed overhead, flying straight toward the other side of the island. Kevin Skylar hesitated briefly before heading in that direction. The island was truly vast. Within the dense forest, there were countless exotic birds, ferocious beasts, fragrant flowers, and rare plants. Even after 3 days of traveling, Kevin Skylar still hadn't reached the forest's edge. While marveling at nature's wonders, he didn't forget to channel his inner energy, which seemed to flow more naturally. Several fierce tigers and giant wolves fell to his hands. While roasting meat, Kevin Skylar pondered silently. It seemed escaping this forest in a short time was impossible. Just then, a chirp-chirp sound echoed. Kevin Skylar tossed aside his roasted meat and leapt onto a treetop. In the distance, he saw a dazzling light, and further beyond, it seemed a great battle was taking place, with waves of terrifying shockwaves rippling through the air. Focusing his energy, Kevin Skylar discerned a vividly colorful egg emitting a 7-colored glow. From within the egg came faint, childlike murmurs. Eh. Kevin Skylar swiftly approached, picked up the egg, and darted away like a wisp of smoke, circling around the battlefield toward the right, heading to the other side of the island. This time, Kevin Skylar dared not delay. Channeling his inner energy, he lightly stepped on tree branches, speeding away. He felt the battlefield in the distance was somehow connected to the egg, and the life within it seemed on the verge of hatching. After running continuously for 5 hours, Kevin Skylar could go no further, his energy nearly depleted. Finding a hidden cave, he placed the egg down and carefully observed it. The egg was the size of a basketball, radiating 7-colored light, and from within, a faint voice called out, "Eh." Kevin Skylar leaped with joy. This was a life. He gently placed the egg down, squatting beside it, determined to see what would emerge. His eyes sparkled as he rubbed his hands, drooling slightly while staring at the egg. Even its shell, with its 7 colors, was extraordinary. Days passed. 1 day, 2 days, half a month went by. Though Kevin Skylar said nothing aloud, in his heart, he cursed the egg thousands of times. Hurry up and hatch! Every day you make noise, but still no sign of you emerging. Kevin Skylar had tried breaking it open, but even his full strength left no mark. Ultimately, using the heaven-born fawn to slash at it had no effect either. Losing hope, Kevin Skylar picked up the egg and headed toward the island's center. Since the egg was so tough, he thought it might make an excellent shield in the future. Kevin Skylar exerted all his strength, traveling for over 10 days, before finally arriving at a flat expanse of land. My heavens, this is... Everywhere was strewn with dragon corpses, and dragon blood had dyed the ground a deep crimson. Even though the sky had cleared, Kevin Schuyler still felt an eerie chill. In the distance, massive mountain ranges were severed, and colossal craters with diameters spanning dozens of meters dotted the area, sending shivers down his spine. Gigantic dragon remains lay scattered everywhere. It took Kevin Schuyler quite some time to regain his composure. After walking forward several hundred meters, he immediately sensed something was off. Suddenly, a terrifying wail echoed, and an enormous ghostly figure emerged from the ground, charging straight at Kevin Schuyler. Without hesitation, Kevin activated his inner energy and fled. Are you kidding me? That wail could shake the earth itself. How could he possibly contend with such a ghostly entity? But the speed of the ghost was beyond anything he could match. In the blink of an eye, it was upon him. Kevin Schuyler mustered all his strength and hurled a multicolored egg toward the ghost. The egg, radiating a seven-colored brilliance infused with Kevin's inner energy, streaked across the sky like a meteor and struck the ghost directly. The ghost's horrific wailing abruptly ceased, and from within the egg came a faint "ee-ah" sound, instantly obliterating the ghost into nothingness. Initially, Kevin Schuyler had planned to flee, but seeing the egg's astonishing power, he turned back to pick it up. The moment he touched it, the egg emitted a radiant light that illuminated the entire land and sky with dazzling brilliance. Suddenly, the egg became the center of a massive vortex. Dragon blood in the surrounding area was rapidly absorbed, and the elemental energy of heaven and earth within a radius of 1,000 meters converged toward the egg. Kevin Schuyler immediately began channeling his inner energy, unlocking unknown meridians and acupoints, absorbing the elemental energy. However, after a short while, he realized he was on the verge of exploding and had to stop. The egg, on the other hand, showed no restraint, absorbing for over 10 minutes before finally stopping. At last, the egg began to crack. Kevin Schuyler rubbed his hands together, ready to witness the birth of this small creature. The egg split down the middle, with the crack growing longer and eventually spreading across the entire egg. The land and sky were bathed in countless rays of light, with celestial mist swirling around, as if all of it was drawn to this tiny being. Suddenly, a distant dragon's roar seemed to be approaching. Kevin Schuyler grabbed the egg and quickly fled. Under the shade of a massive tree, he turned back to take a look and finally stopped. Crack, crack! The egg shattered, and pieces of the shell fell away, revealing the tiny creature within. What kind of monster is this? It resembled a fox, but had a pair of sharp claws. These claws didn't seem to belong to a fox at all. What kind of monster is this? Kevin Schuyler asked as soon as he opened his mouth. The tiny creature, just born, showed no signs of panic. It glanced around before its gaze settled on Kevin Schuyler. Suddenly, its eyes lit up, and it leapt into his arms with its small paws outstretched. Kevin Schuyler remained silent for a long while, hoping it might be some divine beast, but it turned out to be just a fox, a seemingly impure one at that. Shaking his head, Kevin Schuyler tucked the little creature into his arms and picked up the eggshell. The shell appeared to be quite tough and beautiful, so he decided to keep it. "Who are your parents, little one?" Kevin Schuyler asked tentatively. To his surprise, the tiny creature seemed to understand him. It pointed its small paw at Kevin Schuyler, babbling incoherently, then paused to think. It shook its paw and pointed to the sky, paused again, and finally waved its paw erratically. Kevin Schuyler pointed to himself, and then looked at the little creature. "Well, that's it. I picked up a treasure," he thought. "You seem so clever. I'll call you Luna." Indeed, Luna was quite intelligent. She had the form of a fox, her fur pure white without a single blemish, a fluffy tail that constantly wagged, and a sharp little snout that made her incredibly adorable. Even Kevin Schuyler couldn't help but take a liking to her. He thought to himself that as some sentimental young woman saw this little one, trouble might ensue. With this in mind, he deliberately ruffled Luna's fur, turning her into a spiky mess. Luna angrily waved her tiny paws in protest, but Kevin Schuyler ignored her. Once everything was settled, he tucked her back into his arms. Aside from her small paws emitting a faint glow, Luna looked just like an ordinary fox. Her jet-black eyes, darker than obsidian, sparkled as if they held the ocean and the sky within them. Kevin Schuyler stared into those eyes for a long time, so long that Luna became shy and covered her face with her tiny hands. How can such a little thing understand what I'm saying? Kevin Schuyler thought to himself. Oh well. Tightening his belt, Kevin Schuyler carried Luna and continued on his journey. The island was vast. When would he finally encounter another person? For 3 more days, he trudged on, and having Luna by his side added a bit of amusement to the journey. Remarkably, the little creature managed to devour an entire white rabbit. Kevin Schuyler flipped her over in disbelief. Her body wasn't even as big as the rabbit. Where did all that food go? Now, Kevin Schuyler had taken on an additional responsibility. The little one couldn't walk and spent all day nestled in his arms. The journey stretched on for another 3 days until, at last, Kevin Schuyler spotted a wide road. In the distance, at the end of the road, a massive city seemed to emerge, with just a corner of it visible. Overjoyed, Kevin Schuyler hurried toward the city, finally seeing signs of human life. Gently patting the sleeping Luna in his arms, Kevin Schuyler set off toward the city. Chapter 3 Heavenly Emperor City. A vast road stretched out like a dragon before Kevin Schuyler. In the distance, a massive fortress loomed faintly into view. Kevin Schuyler strode forward with swift steps, heading toward the fortress. After walking for 3 full hours, he could finally discern the appearance of this stronghold. Wow! Stretching thousands of meters wide and towering hundreds of meters high, was this a city? No, it was clearly an enormous fortress. Kevin Schuyler channeled his energy, lightly leaping onto the treetops, soaring through the air. Upon reaching the fortress gates, he noticed 2 rows of soldiers standing in perfect formation. Clad in bronze armor, they stood tall and motionless like statues. Could there be a war brewing? These soldiers had clearly undergone rigorous training and battlefield trials. Each exuded a powerful aura of killing intent, their gazes cold and piercing. Kevin Schuyler involuntarily shuddered. What kind of formidable force was this? And what sort of mighty ruler stood behind these soldiers? Heavenly Emperor City. Read the large plaque above the city gates. Kevin Schuyler saw people walking out from within the city, seemingly unfazed by the soldiers. On the contrary, their eyes revealed a sense of reverence. No matter what, Kevin Schuyler straightened his back and walked with feigned composure past the soldiers. He distinctly felt several sharp yet non-hostile spiritual senses sweep over him. It seemed they bore him no ill will. Glancing down at himself, Kevin Schuyler's face burned with embarrassment. His so-called clothing was nothing more than tattered scraps, barely covering his body, leaving much exposed. Though a man, Kevin Schuyler's skin was remarkably smooth, not overly pale but clean. His height, however, was unremarkable, only about 175 centimeters, making him half a head shorter than these soldiers. His shoes had holes in them, making him look no better than a wild man. Feeling his entire body heat up with shame, his face flushed red, Kevin Schuyler hurriedly hugged Luna and sought a secluded spot to hide. What should he do now? He needed to figure out how to get some proper clothes. Thinking of this, Kevin Schuyler glanced at Luna. Perhaps he could sell this little creature. Maybe he could get a few coins to buy some new fabric. The moment the small creature woke up and heard Kevin Schuyler's thoughts, it immediately waved its tiny claws, scribbling furiously on his chest. Kevin Schuyler winced in pain, tears welling up in his eyes, and had no choice but to tighten his grip on the little one until it stuck out its tongue and finally calmed down. Kevin Schuyler hurriedly comforted,
"Don't worry, you're my first friend. How could I sell you? I was just joking."
The little creature waved its paw in protest, as if saying not to joke like that again. Kevin Schuyler was dumbfounded. This little creature seemed far too perceptive. In the bustling city streets, with carts and horses passing by, oddly enough, there were no street vendors
shouting their wares. Only a few warriors and people dressed in peculiar outfits moved back and forth. Kevin Schuyler, out of options, boldly stepped forward. No one initially paid him any attention, but the little creature, seemingly unfamiliar with the world, curiously exclaimed, "Wow, wow!" drawing the gaze of everyone around. Kevin Schuyler found himself in an awkward predicament. Resigned, Kevin Schuyler straightened his posture and walked confidently, firmly pressing the little creature to his chest to keep it hidden. But the little one refused to comply, struggling and crying out loudly. This time, the onlookers couldn't ignore it anymore. Wasn't this animal cruelty? Everyone started looking at Kevin Schuyler with disapproval. He felt helpless and couldn't explain himself. At that moment, a chubby middle-aged man approached with a sincere smile and said, "My friend, you seem to be short on money. How about I buy your little pet for 100 gold coins?" Kevin Schuyler was alarmed. This was his first interaction with someone here, and he barely understood what the man was saying. However, through the man's mental fluctuations, it seemed he wanted to buy Luna. What a joke. There's no way he'd let such a thing happen.
Sir, I'm not selling. He's my friend, not my pet,"
Kevin Schuyler replied in his broken foreign language. The chubby man was visibly taken aback, and the onlookers sighed in relief. The people here were quite civilized. They didn't look down on Kevin Schuyler's attire, and even sincerely offered him help. Embarrassed, Kevin Schuyler asked,
"Sir, is there any place nearby where I can earn some money?"
"What?
You're not from the island?"
the chubby middle-aged man asked in surprise.
"Yes, I just arrived here recently."
The chubby man looked Kevin Schuyler up and down, making Kevin Schuyler feel a chill run down his spine.
Up ahead, there are various mercenary groups, official assessments, rank evaluations, and item appraisals, all lacking manpower. You could try applying for one of those,
he suggested. Kevin Schuyler found it quite difficult to converse with the chubby man. He had to use his spiritual sense to interpret the mental fluctuations of the man while clumsily speaking the local language. After thanking him, Kevin Schuyler headed straight in the direction the man had pointed. In a private room of a nearby tavern, a burly man clad entirely in golden silk leaned slightly back in his chair, giving orders to several subordinates.
"Send someone to follow him. Investigate his background and his intentions. At your command."
A shadow in broad daylight disappeared without a trace. Kevin Schuyler arrived at a vast square nearly 1,000 meters wide. The square was circular, surrounded by various small buildings resembling shops. Kevin Schuyler glanced around. It's over. He couldn't recognize a single word. The flags and signs hanging around were all unfamiliar to him. It's over. It seemed that if he couldn't find a guide, staying here would be impossible. The people here seemed kind-hearted, so they probably wouldn't try to deceive him. Kevin Schuyler mustered his courage and stepped into the first building. After all, he had already embarrassed himself today, so he no longer cared. Relaxing, he walked inside. The interior contained only a single table placed in the center, resembling a medical clinic. Behind it sat an elderly man with snow-white hair, meditating with closed eyes, seemingly at peace. Not wanting to disturb him, Kevin Schuyler found a spot nearby to sit quietly and observe the old man. He tried extending his spiritual sense to see what the elder was doing, but Kevin Schuyler discovered that his spiritual sense had not yet fully developed, leaving him frustrated. Half an hour passed, then another half hour. Although Kevin Schuyler occasionally used his spiritual sense to circulate the true essence within his body, his patience was reaching its limit. Taking a deep breath, he stomped his foot and prepared to leave.
"Young man, don't be so hasty. I haven't tested you yet,"
the elder suddenly spoke. Kevin Schuyler stopped in his tracks and turned around, saying,
"Old man, are you pretending to sleep?"
Kevin Schuyler silently cursed in his heart, casting a disdainful glance at the elder. Yet, he sighed deeply and politely said,
"Sir, I've come to seek your guidance. I can't read the words outside, nor do I know what this place is for. Could I trouble you to give me some direction? I'm short on money, and need to earn a little to support myself."
The old man seemed to wear an expression of,
"As expected,"
then let out a strange laugh, a sound that didn't seem fitting for someone his age. Kevin Schuyler felt as if he was being set up. This elder before him really didn't inspire any sense of security.
"Don't worry, kid. I have no ill intentions toward you. If there's anything I can help you with, I'm more than willing,"
the old man said.
"The people on this island truly are kind,"
Kevin thought as the elder continued,
"Let me test something for you first." "Test what?"
Kevin Schuyler asked, confused by the old man's cryptic words.
"This is the wisdom test. This place of mine is meant to measure wisdom,"
the old man patiently explained.
"What is wisdom test?"
Kevin Schuyler still clearly didn't understand. The old man, though momentarily startled, quickly regained his composure.
"Wisdom test is your ability to comprehend things. It reflects the sum of your life experiences and determines your future prospects. Even if you are a martial artist, it is still very important." "Oh, then let's give it a try."
Kevin Schuyler casually sat down. Chapter 4. Intelligence 200? The old man grabbed Kevin Schuyler's hand, placed it onto a handprint and said,
"Don't let go until it pushes you away on its own."
As soon as Kevin Schuyler's hand touched it, the handprint emitted a beam of light, firmly locking his hand in place. Surroundings shimmered, and Kevin Schuyler found himself in a room filled with tables, chairs, and a large blackboard. The old man stood on the podium, waved his hand, and strange symbols resembling tadpoles appeared on the blackboard. A beam of light shot from the old man's finger into Kevin Schuyler's forehead. At that moment, Kevin Schuyler began to understand what was written on the blackboard.
The first question, when comparing two numbers, we get a quotient. So when comparing two people, what do we get? The second question. The third question.
Half an hour later, the old man was drenched in sweat, his palms soaked. The test of Kevin Schuyler's intellect continued. Another half hour passed, the old man trembled, his entire body drenched, and shakily found a seat to sit down. Kevin Schuyler tilted his head, clearly still pondering the previous question, completely oblivious to the old man's unusual state. The old man muttered to himself,
"The system must be malfunctioning. This set of questions has been used for so many years, it's inevitable there be errors. I need to replace it with a new one. I already know, it's Grey Wolf, right? Only Grey Wolf would say, I will definitely come back. So the answer is Grey Wolf, isn't it? Your story is really interesting, but that pleasant goat is so annoying, always leaving Grey Wolf hungry. How can that be? At least let him have a taste, right?"
The old man wiped his sweat, looking at Kevin Schuyler with eyes as if staring at a monster. Kevin Schuyler looked back at the old man.
"What's wrong with you? You got the answer right." "Got it right? Sure, but what does my intelligence have to do with these silly jokes? You're old and have nothing better to do, so you find a young person to mess around with these boring things, huh?"
The old man replied,
"The time it takes to answer,
the accuracy of the answer, and the reasoning process, each multiplied by its respective percentage, combined gives a preliminary measure of your intelligence. So what's the result? 200, the old man said, trying to stay calm. Then what's your intelligence score, old man? 201, the old man replied weakly. You're higher than me, so you must be smarter than me. I've lived many more years than you, so this ability can grow with age. Really? Then doesn't that mean I can still improve? Yes, that's correct. Grandpa, are you all right? Kevin Schuyler finally noticed the elder's peculiar behavior. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared, and Kevin Schuyler was pushed away, returning to a place resembling the clinic from earlier. The elder handed Kevin Schuyler a map and said, This is the layout of this square. The symbols represent its attributes. For example, this sword icon represents the weapon shop, where you can buy, sell, or repair weapons. With your intelligence, understanding this shouldn't be a problem. Kevin Schuyler felt a mix of excitement and worry. Grandpa, could you guide me? After all, it seems like hours have passed, and no one has come to take care of your business. The elder coughed a few times and shook his head. No, I have other matters to attend to. All right, I'll be going then. Thank you. Kevin Schuyler pushed the door open and stepped out. The elder immediately stood up and shouted toward the screen behind him. Get out here! This child is under my care from now on. Go back and tell him not to bother the boy anymore. Yes, understood. The elder calmed himself and muttered. This child is no ordinary one. I must ensure no one takes advantage of him. With that, the elder waved his hand, and a dark light flashed. A tall figure appeared in midair. Diana Blake, go protect that child. Do not interfere in his normal life, but ensure no one deceives or exploits him. He has his own tribulations to face. Do not assist him, but under no circumstances allow anyone to use his innocence to harm others. Understood? Yes, Grandpa. The shadow vanished into thin air. The elder sighed to himself. I've wasted so many years of my life. At this age, I still think I can take pride in anything. Sigh. He reopened an old intelligence report. Ranked first with a score of 120 was the elder's disciple, Shing Tian, while the others were below 110. Although intelligence can grow with age and may initially be overlooked, the child's temperament seems problematic. I need to investigate further. That sword also doesn't seem ordinary. The elder sank into deep thought. Chapter 5 Strategy Experimentation. Kevin Schuyler carried Luna while following the directions on the map. Suddenly, he noticed a small room where a group of young men and women, around his age, were gathered around a middle-aged man. Intrigued, Kevin Schuyler approached them. Strangely, all the young people were motionless, their bodies stiff, eyes tightly shut, and hands forming a peculiar gesture. Kevin Schuyler, puzzled, was about to ask a question. The middle-aged man suddenly appeared right in front of him. "Aw, young man, you've come to test your battle strength too, haven't you? Come over here." The middle-aged man had a robust and imposing figure, his face adorned with a full beard, but now he politely poured tea and invited Kevin Schuyler to sit. What's with your clothes?" "Oh, I see. You must have just finished a mission, and they got damaged, right? You're quite something, though. Your clothes are all torn up, yet you're completely unharmed." Kevin Schuyler looked at the middle-aged man, speechless. He used his mental strength to mimic the man's tone, managing only a faint am. In truth, he had nothing to say, so he simply nodded. The middle-aged man clearly noticed Kevin Schuyler's unusual voice, but chose not to comment. "Oh, this little fox is quite nice, but when you're being tested, leave it outside, all right?" The middle-aged man had spotted Luna, who was fast asleep in Kevin Schuyler's arms. Feeling a bit uneasy, Kevin Schuyler nervously and carefully placed Luna into a nearby box. The middle-aged man scratched his head and changed the subject. "All right, my name is Michael Carter. I'm the battle strength examiner for Heavenly Emperor City. You came here to get tested, didn't you?" My name is Kevin Schuyler," Michael Carter said as he pulled out a scroll. "This must be your first time here. Let me teach you how to use this scroll." Kevin Schuyler observed it carefully, memorizing every detail. He then unrolled the scroll, formed a hand seal, and chanted, "Seal art, illusion test, activate." Yet, nothing happened. Michael Carter and Kevin Schuyler exchanged glances. Michael's previously surprised expression turned neutral. "Ha, it's fine. Everyone's first time is like this." Before Michael could finish his sentence, Kevin Schuyler suddenly found himself standing in a large plaza. Other young individuals from outside were there too. "So that's how it works. It seems everyone entered here through the scroll," Kevin thought to himself. A voice suddenly echoed, "Please follow the instructions. Step 1. Strike the large drum in front of you with all your strength." A massive drum emerged from the ground. Kevin Schuyler pondered for a moment, then gathered his internal energy. His powerful spiritual force guided the energy to concentrate in his hands. The wind howled around him, forming an imposing aura. "Ah!" Kevin shouted, channeling all his power into a strike against the drum. Boom! Thrum! The sound echoed throughout the plaza. The recoil sent Kevin Schuyler flying backward over 10 meters, dislocating his hand in the process. He landed painfully on the ground, but quickly pressed his left hand against the injured one. Phew! He sighed in relief as he managed to reset the joint. Strength Index 40. Step 2. Quickly evade the oncoming projectiles. As the voice finished speaking, the large drum disappeared, and a wall rose from the ground. The wall was riddled with holes, emitting a chilling killing intent. Kevin Schuyler remained vigilant, staring intently at the holes. Whoosh! As expected, hundreds, if not thousands, of projectiles shot out from the holes, aiming straight for him. His pupils contracted as he leapt backward, somersaulting out of harm's way. The spot he had just been standing on was now riddled with projectiles. Kevin exhaled in relief, but before he could compose himself, a terrifying warning sound erupted from above. Countless projectiles hurtled toward him. If I keep retreating in a straight line, the projectiles will easily catch up. I'll exhaust myself and end up like a pincushion, Kevin thought. He jumped sideways to evade the attack, but to his dismay, the projectiles altered their trajectory to follow him. Mid-air and unable to dodge further, he had no choice but to defend himself. Yet, as soon as he raised his hands, the voice from earlier echoed again. The projectiles are illusionary attacks. Defending is useless. What the? Why didn't you say so earlier? Kevin shouted in frustration. Thud! A projectile pierced his palm, blood dripping. Down. Kevin crouched in pain, barely catching his breath, before another wave of projectiles came flying toward him. He looked up. Speed Index 50. Step 3. Use any combat technique of your choice. Kevin Schuyler, now resembling a human pincushion with projectiles embedded all over his body, knelt on the ground, panting heavily. Suddenly, a green light enveloped him, and his wounds healed completely. The projectiles vanished as if none of it had ever happened. Battle technique? I'm doomed. I don't have any battle technique. Kevin Schuyler thought hard, racking his brain. Previously, when fighting that strange person, it seemed like he had used some kind of battle technique with the Heavenborn Fang. But now, even after drawing the Heavenborn Fang, he couldn't muster any aura at all. As he kept pondering, half an hour passed, then another half hour.
Do you actually have a battle technique or not? Sorry, Uncle, could you let me see their battle techniques for a bit?
Kevin Schuyler pointed at the other young people.
All right,
Michael Carter reluctantly replied. Michael Carter waved his hand, and Kevin Schuyler was teleported into midair. Below, two youths were facing off. One had white hair, wore white clothes, and was entirely covered in white. Even his eyes were white. Kevin Schuyler stared in astonishment at the white-haired youth. He held a long sword about 120 centimeters in length, with his left index and middle fingers pressed together, seemingly forming a sword seal. Opposite him was a youth with thick eyebrows and short hair, bearing a striking resemblance to Rock Lee from Naruto. He wielded no weapon. The two stood about 5 meters apart, observing their opponent. Suddenly, the thick-browed youth charged forward, shouting, "Clone barrage!" The thick-browed youth split into 5 clones, all rushing toward the white-haired youth. Startled, the white-haired youth stepped back, planted his sword into the ground, and formed a seal with both hands, shouting, "Sword technique clone slash!" Instantly, 5 flying swords emerged from the ground, each targeting one clone. As expected, Rock Lee's clones were pierced through, leaving only his original body. However, the real body seized the moment, leaping from the ground and slashing downward from midair. The white-haired youth smirked slyly. "You've fallen into my trap, Mason Carter." With that, the white-clad youth swung his sword upward, his left hand stretched horizontally, shouting, "Blade storm!" Countless sword shadows swirled around the white-haired youth, forming a small whirlwind. "Ah, how annoying!" Mason Carter, the thick-browed youth, reluctantly struck toward the whirlwind, unable to move as he was still in midair. Thud! Clearly, Mason Carter was injured. The white-haired teenager hurriedly stopped forming hand seals, and the whirlwind gradually subsided. "Are you all right, Mason Carter?" The white-haired teenager quickly ran over to support him. "Don't worry, it's not the first time. But losing to you repeatedly, I really can't accept it. Hee, don't scare me. I was just lucky," Mason Carter replied. It was evident that the two were very familiar with each other. Without realizing it, Kevin Schuyler had already returned to the square. "I say, it's your turn now." Kevin Schuyler snapped out of his thoughts. It turned out that everyone was watching him. At this moment, Kevin Schuyler was truly nervous. What should he do now? Calmly thinking, he recalled how Mason Carter had earlier forced the elemental energy out of his body, then used his spiritual power to control it and form a clone for the attack. Meanwhile, the white-haired teenager had directed elemental energy through his sword into the ground, triggering an eruption. Such techniques required immense control and powerful elemental energy. With his current abilities, Kevin Schuyler couldn't achieve that. Once his elemental energy left his body, his spiritual power couldn't control it properly, and he could only barely form an elemental energy bullet. With that thought, Kevin Schuyler clasped his hands together and slowly separated them. A sphere of elemental energy began to form, growing to the size of a soccer ball. Sweat poured down Kevin Schuyler's face as he struggled to lift the soccer ball. "It must not move, or I'm done for." Kevin Schuyler's combat technique, Dragon Orb, was now in action. He jumped into the air, and Dragon Orb flew forward. Boom! A loud explosion sent dust flying everywhere. About 10 minutes later, Kevin Schuyler crawled out of the dust and dirt. Wow! Ahead of him, about 20 meters away, was a massive crater with a radius of 2 meters and a depth of 5 meters. Overjoyed, Kevin Schuyler jumped up and down. "Looks like I'm still pretty amazing after all." Oh! Kevin Schuyler suddenly realized that the young people around him were looking at him as if he were a monster, all sharing the same expression. It seems their thoughts at this moment are unanimous, which is why they have the same expression, he thought.
After a few seconds of silence, a sudden flash of light appeared in the sky, and Kevin Schuyler, along with everyone else, returned to the small pavilion. In the center stood an elder, holding a stack of papers in his hand.
Hey, are you stupid or what? Using Kai energy to attack directly?
A young man quietly approached and spoke. Kevin Schuyler thought for a few seconds and realized that the people here referred to the combination of spiritual power and essence as Kai energy.
Doing so not only consumes a lot, but is also slow. On the battlefield, it's basically useless.
Kevin Schuyler thought to himself, indeed, using Kai energy like that consumes too much and can't even hit the enemy. Would the enemy just stand there waiting for me to attack? Even if they did, I probably wouldn't be able to land a hit.
Thanks, brother. I didn't have any other choice. My master kept urging me. That's just how Master Michael Carter is, completely impatient. Hey, you two little brats, what are you babbling about? Hurry up and come here to receive your scores. Yes, master, we're coming. All right. Blake Carter, Strength 50, Speed 75, Combat Skills 120, Total Combat Power 85.
Wow, so handsome. Amid the cheers of the female disciples, the young man named Blake Carter smiled as he received his score sheet. He walked over to Mason Carter and gave a slight grin, signaling it was his turn.
Mason Carter, Strength 55, Speed 80, Combat Skills 100, Total Combat Power 80.
Mason Carter shook his head, holding his achievement sheet.
As usual, my treat.
The two walked out together. When everyone had received their achievement sheets, Michael Carter, the master, still hadn't announced Kevin Schuyler's results.
Could it be that my results are really bad?
Kevin wondered aloud.
Master, why isn't mine here?
Michael Carter seemed to have anticipated this and said,
Follow me.
Kevin Schuyler hesitantly followed his master to a room in the pavilion. The room was empty. With his back turned to Kevin Schuyler, the master spoke.
Strength, 40, Speed, 50, Combat Technique, 0, Total Combat Power, 27.
As expected, Kevin Schuyler lowered his head in disappointment.
However, if my guess is correct, you don't even know how to use combat techniques properly. That was your first time, wasn't it?
Yes, Kevin admitted. Michael Carter thought to himself, in such a short amount of time, he managed to grasp the essence of Kai energy and even combine it to launch an attack. Though it was his first attempt, there were no obstacles or side effects. Could he have practiced before, or is he a genius?
Do you know?
Michael Carter continued.
The first time I used a combat technique, I was unconscious for 3 days, and I even injured my fellow disciples. They've mastered it so well because they've practiced countless times.
Really? Kevin murmured.
So, you're still very exceptional.
Really? Kevin Schuyler's eyes lit up with excitement. Seeing his reaction, Michael Carter already had his answer in mind.
Go wash up and change your clothes. I bought you a new outfit. You're not a student here. They all wear badges on their chests.
Huh?
Master, I don't have the money to repay you. Ha ha ha, what are you saying? I'm already very happy that you all came here.
Money?
What money? Really? That's great.
Kevin Schuyler took a clean bath at Michael Carter's place and dressed in a fresh outfit that matched the local customs. Of course, he didn't forget to bathe Luna as well. The little creature had ended up drinking quite a bit of soapy water. Finally, when Kevin Schuyler stepped out, Master Michael Carter couldn't help but be startled. His hair, tied up with a wooden hairpin, now reached his shoulders. His resolute face, with a high, straight nose, exuded a faint heroic aura between his brows. His sharp gaze was like a laser. While his smiling face gave off a friendly impression, His commanding presence made others hesitant to approach casually. Those eyes were anything but ordinary. When Michael Carter looked into them, it felt as though he was gazing into millennia of history. How could this 15 or 16-year-old boy seem so extraordinary? What exactly was going on? Michael Carter couldn't comprehend it. After Kevin Schuyler put on his clothes, the long robe further accentuated his slender figure. Though Kevin Schuyler didn't appear tall or muscular, his well-proportioned physique radiated a harmonious beauty. The long warrior boots, crafted from soft, elastic silk material, were light and reinforced with a layer of soft stones on the soles. They were delicate yet remarkably durable. For the first time, Kevin Schuyler wore attire deeply rooted in the culture of this mysterious island. Accompanied by Luna, he began his mission-driven life. Michael Carter had informed him where to find the military affairs office. Awaiting him was a harsh reality. Life would teach him that not everyone is kind, and the world is riddled with traps and schemes. A pure-hearted person like him would inevitably face painful choices in life. Grow up quickly, Kevin Schuyler. A long journey lies ahead of you. No matter which path you choose, it will lead you to a bright future. Yet some burdens are yours to bear. Chapter 6. The First Mission. Kevin Schuyler walked along the road toward the military affairs office, thinking to himself, I feel a little lost. Where do I come from? This place is clearly not my homeland. Although everyone here is kind, I ultimately don't belong here. Who are my parents? It's so frustrating. After taking a few turns, Kevin Schuyler arrived at the military affairs office marked on the map. As he had anticipated, both sides of the gate were guarded by rows of bronze-armored soldiers. Master Michael Carter once said that this was the Heavenly Guardian Legion, the protective army of Heavenly Emperor City. Each of these warriors possessed immense strength and had defended the city from numerous monster attacks. Speaking of monsters, Michael Carter had mentioned that to the north of Heavenly Emperor City lay a mysterious dense forest, home to various kinds of beasts. They had launched several large-scale attacks in the past, but were always repelled by the city lord leading the Heavenly Guardian Legion. If they're just beasts, why do they attack so deliberately? There must be someone controlling them. Could it even be the Beast King? Kevin Schuyler wondered. Having witnessed the imposing presence of the bronze-armored warriors once before, Kevin Schuyler no longer felt as intimidated as he initially did. Walking through the gate of the military affairs office, a vast courtyard unfolded before him. The square-shaped courtyard had walls on 3 sides, adorned with scrolls and information boards. Opposite the entrance, there was a passageway that seemed to lead to a building at the back. The courtyard was bustling with activity, filled with people of all kinds. The noise was unending. Some were hawking wares, others grumbling about meager mission rewards, and still others bartering goods. No one seemed to notice Kevin Schuyler's arrival. Judging by their attire, everyone seemed to wear the same uniform. The scrolls hanging on the walls were likely mission postings. Moreover, based on the number of people gathered at different spots, the missions on the right side appeared to be the simplest. Otherwise, why would the left side of the opposite wall have only 2 scrolls with no one standing beneath them? Those must be the hardest missions, ones no one could complete. The rankings likely corresponded to mission difficulty. The hardest was S rank, followed by A, B, C, and D. Looking at the other walls, there were recruitment posters for mercenaries, team formation notices for completing missions, and barter advertisements. Kevin Schuyler noticed many young men and women around his age standing near the C and D-ranked missions. Those who could take on B or A-ranked missions were mostly middle-aged or in teams. Kevin Schuyler rubbed his not-so-full stomach and muttered, I need to make some money for food quickly. Whether I came from Fire Planet or Moon Sphere, I still need to fill my stomach first. With that, Kevin Schuyler walked toward the D-rank mission area. Since there weren't many people, he easily reached the front and casually grabbed a scroll. Missing coffee cat. Catherine Morgan's precious pet has mysteriously disappeared. It's been 3 days with no trace. Please help her find her pet so the elderly woman doesn't have to endure her old age in loneliness.
Ugh, come on, it's just finding a cat. Does this really need to be posted as a mission? Well, you're mistaken then.
Kevin Schuyler turned his head to the right, and a simple, honest face appeared before him. The speaker was a young man with a square-shaped face, standing over 180 centimeters tall, broad shoulders, a slim waist, and a short buzz cut that exuded energy. His sun-kissed skin suggested he had endured harsh weather, and his muscular frame resembled coiled dragons wrapped around his body. His bright, clear eyes immediately gave off the impression of a sincere and trustworthy person. Kevin Schuyler politely asked,
"Hello, my name is Kevin Schuyler. I just arrived here. What did you mean earlier when you said not necessarily? I was wondering why I hadn't seen you before. My name is Adam Miller, and I'm a student at Imagination University. Today's my day off, so I came here to complete a task and improve my cultivation." Adam Miller? Imagination University?
After hearing Adam Miller's explanation, Kevin Schuyler finally understood. In Heavenly Emperor City, there was a renowned institution called Imagination University, the primary training ground for talent in the city. Most of Heavenly Emperor City's resources came from this university. By completing various tasks for the citizens to earn funding, combined with support from the city's government, Imagination University held a prestigious position in the city. Becoming a student there wasn't easy. Besides paying high tuition fees, one also needed a solid foundation. Naturally, the university's faculty was top-notch, and each graduating class consistently produced remarkable achievements. Upon hearing the name Adam Miller, Kevin Schuyler simply smiled. What a fitting name for him.
As an elite warrior, aside from combat strength and techniques, basic skills like tracking, pursuit, and reconnaissance are equally important. That's why every task, no matter how small, must be taken seriously. My master always says so.
Kevin Schuyler found this reasoning quite logical, and decided to take on the task.
You just need to register over there. Check out the mission rewards.
Of course, Kevin Schuyler had already looked at the rewards. 5 gold coins and an iron bow.
Only 5 gold coins? Isn't that a bit low?
Kevin Schuyler muttered to himself.
For such a low-level task, getting 5 gold coins is already a blessing.
Just then, an incredibly handsome man walked by and overheard Kevin Schuyler's remark. He sneered coldly. Kevin Schuyler looked up to see a fair-skinned young man with a slender figure, a high, straight nose, and an air of disdain for everything around him. With his hands in his pockets, he walked past arrogantly.
That's Tristan Reed, one of the top 10 first-year students at our school. It's said he was born with a natural talent for learning combat techniques and inherited secret arts from his father. His combat strength is terrifying. On top of that, he's incredibly handsome, making him very popular among the female students. Wherever he goes, he's surrounded by admirers.
With an admiring gaze, Nock foolishly looked at Tristan Reed. After listening, Kevin Schuyler slightly nodded to express his respect. The man named Tristan Reed didn't even glance back and walked straight towards Zone C. Kevin Schuyler didn't mind. After registering, he bid farewell to Adam Miller and headed toward the location described in the mission to set off.
Take care, brother Kevin Schuyler.
Adam Miller's sincerity made Kevin Schuyler quite fond of him, and he kept this honest and somewhat naive Adam Miller in his heart. Heavenly Emperor City is bordered by the sea to the south, an endless forest to the north, and another city to the east, Phoenix City. This city is predominantly populated by magicians,
most of whom are women. Sophia Lawrence is one such woman. Although females make up the majority, Phoenix City boasts the strongest power. In past battles against invading beasts, Phoenix City played a pivotal role. Its terrifying magic and wide-range offensive support left all the warriors in awe. To the west lies a city named Maple Leaf. This city has a smaller population, with Heavenly Emperor City boasting around 2 million residents, Phoenix City over 1.5 million, while Maple Leaf City has only about 1 million. However, its strength is formidable due to the uniqueness of its warriors. They call their warriors ninjas. Ninjas not only possess extraordinary physical techniques, but also excel in unpredictable transformation techniques, which leave their opponents bewildered. Coupled with their exceptional overall qualities and terrifying professional ethics, ninjas are considered the most powerful individual combatants. When fighting as a group, they elevate teamwork to its utmost potential. This is why they are able to stand against the two major cities. The leader of Maple Leaf City, Ethan Woods, is rumored to have once ventured deep into the northern forests alone and returned unscathed, leaving behind countless legendary tales. The three universities in the three nations are the primary institutions for cultivating combat power. Huasoi University in Phoenix City and Huiying University in Maple Leaf City are both highly renowned. These three universities often represent their nations in strength competitions. Philip Lawrence, the leader of Heavenly Emperor City, once convened a three-nation summit to discuss strategies for defending against beast attacks. As a result, the three nations set aside their conflicts to face a common enemy, and have maintained peace for 300 years without any warfare. Although the tripartite division of the three nations has lasted for centuries, hidden rivalries and struggles have grown increasingly intense. After all, beast tribes do not frequently attack humans, so humans naturally find other matters to occupy themselves. Beyond the dense forests, there are still many powerful races dominating the northern parts of the island. This island is so vast that it defies ordinary imagination. It is said that no one has ever fully explored the entire island, nor has anyone successfully crossed the forests to reach the other side. Traveling by sea is even more perilous. Long ago, a massive sea monster nearly destroyed the three nations. It was only through the combined efforts of the three leaders, with Sophia Lawrence personally sealing the creature beneath the ocean, that disaster was averted. Since then, no one dares to embark on long sea voyages. In truth, Kevin Schuyler himself is unaware that his intelligence has helped him avoid countless troubles. His extraordinary ability to comprehend and absorb knowledge has enabled him to survive resiliently on this unfamiliar island. Of course, the guidance of the kind-hearted island residents has also played a crucial role in steering Kevin Schuyler in the right direction. Finally arriving at the location described in the mission, where Coffee Cat went missing, a cemetery. Mrs. Catherine Morgan had lost her small cat while visiting her ex-husband's grave. Kevin Schuyler recalled Adam Miller's words. As an elite warrior, beyond combat power and skills, basic tracking, investigation, and searching abilities are equally important. Never underestimate any task. Always complete it seriously. For Kevin Schuyler, such abilities were his forte. He circled around the grave of Catherine Morgan's ex-husband, but found no traces. Coffee Cat, being relatively large, agile, and having a good relationship with Mrs. Morgan, was unlikely to have wandered off unnoticed. The chances were high that it had been abducted. If so, its sharp claws might have left scratch marks, likely behind Mrs. Morgan. As Kevin turned, he seemed to visualize the scene and headed toward the nearby woods. Indeed, behind a few small trees, faint scratch marks from a cat stood out. Though not very clear, Kevin's sharp eyes confirmed to himself that these were signs of a struggle. Judging by the depth of the scratches, the cat hadn't been injured. The progression from shallow to deep marks indicated it had been carried off from the front. Kevin leapt forward, tracking faint traces for nearly half an hour until he reached a stone forest. Towering rock formations of various shapes stood densely together. After circling the area, Kevin discovered it was a labyrinth, difficult to navigate once inside. However, Kevin instinctively sensed direction with ease. After careful searching, a massive cave appeared before him. Hiding behind a rock, Kevin observed stealthily. If a creature resided in this cave, its size would likely be at least 3 meters tall. Judging by the large claw marks on the rocks near the cave entrance, it was unlikely to be a herbivore. Focusing his vision, Kevin noticed the cave extended deeply, with cold winds blowing from its entrance. He was certain Coffee Cat was here, though whether it was inside the cave remained uncertain. After a moment's hesitation, Kevin decided to venture in and find out. Inside, the cave was dark, its walls made of solid granite. It appeared to be a natural formation, but its depth was astonishing. Kevin Schuyler gently stepped inside, feeling the cold air rising from the ground. Droplets of water fell rhythmically from the cave's ceiling, creating a crisp and resonant sound. Kevin Schuyler heightened his senses to their maximum sensitivity. In such a perilous situation, even a moment of carelessness could cost his life. As he ventured further into the cave, a faint meow echoed softly. "So it really is here." Kevin Schuyler confirmed that the small cat was inside the cave and seemingly unharmed. But what exactly was going on? As Kevin Schuyler prepared to move forward, he suddenly sensed that some creature within had become aware of his presence. Though unsure why he felt this way, he instinctively stepped back. Sure enough, a terrifying crescent-shaped killing force struck the spot he had just been standing on, shattering the solid granite. Kevin Schuyler took a sharp breath. If that had hit him, would he have survived? Without hesitation, Kevin Schuyler unleashed a palm strike, sending small stones flying toward the unknown creature. As the dust settled, 2 enormous lantern-like eyes appeared before him, their golden irises encasing blood-red pupils. This time, Kevin Schuyler didn't hesitate. He turned and ran. It was absurd. A creature this massive, with claws so razor-sharp. Just as Kevin Schuyler reached the cave's entrance, the monstrous claws closed in from behind, piercing through his body. Suspended in midair, Kevin Schuyler stared in agony at the claws impaling his chest, fresh blood dripping down. "Demon cat!" With a thud, Kevin Schuyler's body dissolved into a puff of smoke. Above the cave entrance, a shadowy figure descended, wielding a black long sword. The demon cat swiftly recoiled, retreating into the cave to evade the attack. The figure landed and immediately dashed forward, their blade infused with Kai energy, slicing through the air with deadly precision toward the demon cat's neck. Unexpectedly, the demon cat didn't dodge but counterattacked instead, its claws glowing with a sinister black light as they clashed directly with the black blade. The dark aura radiating from the claws proved this was no ordinary strike. Clang! The shadowy figure was forced backward, giving the demon cat the opportunity to lunge forward. Man and beast clashed fiercely at the cave entrance. The shadowy figure was none other than Kevin Schuyler. Before entering the cave, Kevin Schuyler had anticipated danger and mimicked Mason Carter's technique to create a decoy. Unfortunately, Kevin Schuyler's spiritual energy was limited and couldn't fully control the decoy. He had to mold a humanoid figure from mud, infuse it with Kai energy, and let it scout ahead. While he couldn't control it directly, it served its purpose as a probe for the unknown. Now, Kevin Schuyler finally saw the true form of the cave's master, a massive demon cat, approximately 3 meters tall and 5 meters long, with razor-sharp fangs half a meter long jutting menacingly from its mouth. Its body was covered in patches of fur, its thick coat bristling with hostility. Its terrifying claws gleamed coldly, ready to strike,
while its 1-meter-long tail swayed ominously. With its sinuous, agile movements, Kevin Schuyler could imagine the cat's speed and destructive power. One thought filled Kevin Schuyler's mind: run. Though his mind screamed to flee, Kevin Schuyler outwardly remained calm. Chi energy enveloped his body, ready to launch an attack at any moment. Meanwhile, his thoughts raced, trying to devise a plan. A direct confrontation was clearly out of the question, yet running seemed equally futile, given the speed he had just witnessed. What to do? What to do? Before Kevin Schuyler could think much, the demon cat let out a long roar. Though not loud, the sound was piercing, causing eardrums to ache and his mind to spin. The demon cat leaped forward, launching an attack, its right claw raised and aimed at Kevin Schuyler. His pupil shrank as he jumped backward, narrowly dodging the strike. The demon cat missed, and was about to pounce again when, with a sudden boom, the ground beneath it exploded. Kevin Schuyler had already anticipated that such a massive cave wouldn't be an easy place to meddle with. The rubble, infused with Chi energy, exploded under the demon cat's heavy step. Its paw was injured by the sharp debris, and blood quickly gushed out. Seeing this, Kevin Schuyler rolled forward, positioning himself under the demon cat's belly. The creature wanted to escape, but it was too late. Heavenly Fang, brimming with lethal Chi energy, slashed upward as Kevin used the momentum of his roll, carving a line from head to tail. What should have been a bloody scene instead turned bizarre, as the demon cat's belly quickly healed. By the time Kevin reached its tail, the demon cat had dodged, once again assuming a stance of confrontation. Kevin Schuyler realized he was at a disadvantage. If not for the traps he had set earlier, there was no way he could have approached the demon cat. Now that the traps were all used up, relying solely on his strength, how could he possibly be a match for it? As expected, the demon cat opened its mouth wide, releasing a terrifying toxic smoke that spread toward Kevin Schuyler. He had already moved to one side the moment the creature opened its mouth, reacting swiftly. Although the smoke didn't harm him, the demon cat leaped into the air, this time striking with its left paw. Kevin Schuyler had no choice but to turn back, swinging his blade forcefully. The blade, imbued with purple Chi energy, met the demon cat's attack. Boom! As expected, he was no match. Kevin Schuyler was sent flying like a fallen leaf, spewing a mouthful of fresh blood that arced through the air. Heavenly Fang was nearly knocked from his grasp. Quickly adjusting his posture before landing, Kevin's feet touched the ground, and he retreated rapidly, believing the stone forest could provide cover. Although the demon cat was the master of this domain, its massive size worked against it. Kevin swiftly darted into a narrow rocky path, twisting and turning through it. The demon cat landed on a large boulder, its golden eyes shooting out sharp beams of light. Kevin Schuyler hit carefully, but to his dismay, the demon cat charged toward him without hesitation. How did it know my location? Kevin Schuyler sensed the killing intent above his head and quickly shifted positions. Sure enough, the rock he had just been hiding behind was shattered by the demon cat. After dodging several more times, he was still discovered by the creature. Exhausted, Kevin Schuyler found himself forced out of the stone forest and into an open clearing by the relentless demon cat. Roar! Another ferocious growl erupted as its merciless claws, carrying terrifying force, slashed straight down. Kevin Schuyler had no other choice. Gritting his teeth, he plunged the heaven-born Fang into the ground, attempting to mimic the sword technique split shadow slash that Blake Carter had demonstrated during the combat assessment. Kevin Schuyler had no control over his Chi energy, letting it flow through the heaven-born Fang into the earth, where it exploded. Boom! The demon cat wasn't hit by the blast, but Kevin Schuyler was knocked to the ground. Roar! The demon cat, now enraged, clearly had no intention of prolonging the fight. Its blood-stained maw opened wide, releasing thick, swirling smoke that enveloped Kevin Schuyler like a deadly blade. Paralyzed and unable to move, Kevin Schuyler, in a desperate bid for survival, hurled the heaven-born Fang toward the demon cat. With a sharp clang, Kevin Schuyler collapsed to the ground, his hands feebly shielding his chest. Somehow, the demon cat's attack seemed to have been blocked. Was it the heaven-born Fang? Blood trickled from the corner of Kevin Schuyler's mouth as he peered through the smoke. Behind the demon cat, he caught sight of a familiar figure descending from the air with a powerful strike. Though the smoke began to dissipate, Kevin Schuyler could hold on no longer and passed out. Chapter 7. A shocking strike. When Kevin Schuyler regained consciousness, he found himself still lying in the same spot. Not far from him, the massive body of the demon cat had fallen, sliced in half. Blood pooled across the ground, exposing white bones, and its lifeless eyes still reflected an unwillingness to accept its fate. "I say, you finally woke up." Kevin Schuyler turned his head to the side. It was Tristan Reed, the genius Adam Miller always spoke of. As expected, he was formidable. Even the demon cat had been slain by him. "Did you save me?" "Truly, thank you." Over the past few days, Kevin Schuyler had been diligently studying the language of this continent. Astonishingly, he quickly mastered most of the spoken phrases, and no longer needed to rely on mental energy for communication. "Are you joking? Why would I save you? Whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. I was simply tasked with killing this demon cat. Don't misunderstand." After speaking, he leaped into the air, disappearing in just a few steps. Kevin Schuyler stared at Tristan Reed's departing figure with suspicion, filled with questions. "He clearly saved me, but could it really just be a coincidence?" "Ah, whatever," Kevin Schuyler thought to himself, but then remembered little cat hadn't been rescued yet. Just as he was about to get up, he felt his entire body ache. During the earlier battle, he had taken a few hits from the demon cat, and now his whole body was in pain. Luckily, he had handed Luna over to Mr. Michael Carter beforehand. Otherwise, it would have been disastrous. Ever since learning that Luna only seemed to sleep, Kevin Schuyler entrusted the little fox to Mr. Michael Carter to avoid the hassle of carrying her around. However, Kevin Schuyler didn't know that Luna's combat abilities far surpassed his current strength. Kevin Schuyler forced himself to pick up the heaven-born Fang and enter the cave, heading straight to the deepest part. On a stone bed lay a small cat, sleeping soundly. It didn't appear to be in any danger. Strange, why had the demon cat brought it here without harming it? Kevin Schuyler glanced around but found nothing unusual. With a puzzled expression, he grabbed the small cat and started heading back. The kitten, startled awake, tried to escape, but Kevin Schuyler didn't give it the chance, grabbing it by the scruff and carrying it along. After successfully completing the mission, Kevin Schuyler received 5 gold coins and an iron bow. Lady Catherine Morgan repeatedly expressed her gratitude, saying she couldn't live without the kitten. Kevin Schuyler accepted the mission rewards and quickly left, not wanting to hear the elderly woman recount stories about her and the little cat. At the bathhouse, after inquiring with the innkeeper, Kevin Schuyler learned about the island's currency system. Gold coins turned out to be a low-tier currency, as the locals primarily used cards for transactions. Unbeknownst to Kevin Schuyler, the Heavenly Emperor City Forest in the north was rich in mineral resources, making gold naturally less valuable. For convenience, the 3 major cities had unified their currency system using alloy cards, which, after being enchanted by mages, served as a payment method. Since the area was isolated from the outside world, there were no complications. 10 units, jiao, equaled 1 silver coin, 10 silver coins, yuan, made 1 gold coin, 10 gold coins, 10 yuan, equaled $1, $10, 100 yuan, equaled 1 sun coin, and 10 sun coins, 1,000 yuan, equaled 1 renminbi, 10,000 yuan. Kevin Schuyler spent 2 gold coins on 3 sets of clothes, bathed, and ate to his heart's content, leaving him with only 2 silver coins in hand. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. What about tomorrow's breakfast money? And where would he sleep tonight? Having no other choice, guessing that there would be no food at the inn tomorrow morning, Kevin Schuyler had to find a quiet alley, sit down, and mutter, "Looks like I'll have to sleep here tonight." It was early summer. The moon and stars were sparse, and a crescent moon hung high in the sky. Kevin Schuyler frowned. In this foreign land, though he was quickly adapting, where exactly did he come from? Back at the sea, could it be that he had been swept ashore by the waves? But why did he have basic knowledge yet no memory of his past? Could it be that his head had been injured, causing him to lose all prior memories? And what about True Marshall? Who was that person who looked exactly like him? Kevin Schuyler focused inwardly on his dantian, where 3 golden orbs rested motionlessly, 1 gold and 2 purple. Even though he couldn't understand these mysteries, why couldn't his spiritual power leave his body? How was he supposed to control his Kai energy? If he couldn't use magic, that was one thing, but at this rate, he couldn't even utilize combat techniques. Despite sensing immense spiritual power within himself, it was useless if he couldn't project it outward. He couldn't even control his avatar. Was he destined to be unable to use spiritual power and live as an ordinary person? The people here, though kind and honest, were remarkably powerful. Even first-year students were so formidable, not to mention those soldiers whose killing intent was terrifying. He had barely survived a standard D-rank mission. How could he continue like this? Thinking of this, Kevin Schuyler grew furious and punched himself several times. At this moment, Kevin Schuyler noticed that the 2 words, True Marshall, on his chest suddenly emitted a faint glow. A stream of information surged within him. Kevin Schuyler closed his eyes, focused his mind, and received this flow of information. It turned out that the reason Kevin Schuyler previously thought that the essence energy was referred to as Kai energy by the people here was that they were not pure martial artists. Instead, they pursued a path of divine abilities, which involved combining spiritual energy with internal power. By using spiritual energy to control and release immense attacks, they achieved extraordinary power. Typically, they stored their cultivated internal power within their dantian, drawing it out through spiritual energy when needed. The amount of stored power and the strength of their spiritual energy determined victory or defeat. Naturally, each individual followed a different path, and countless methods of cultivation had been developed over thousands of years of inheritance. However, it was clear that this method of cultivation was not suitable for Kevin Schuyler. So what method suits me? Tell me, where do I come from? Speak! Kevin Schuyler screamed internally, but unfortunately, after the flow of information disappeared, there was nothing left. The 2 words, True Marshall, returned to normal. Kevin Schuyler pondered for a long time, and eventually thought of the old man from before. Before disappearing, the old man had said, "You don't belong to this world, but since you're here, live well. If you want to survive, you must learn to use chi." With Kevin Schuyler's intelligence, it wasn't hard for him to deduce that this old man must know his origins. But why didn't he say more? These old geezers are so annoying, always pretending to be profound, never speaking clearly. In the future, survival would depend on strength. But in his current state, magic was hopeless, and he couldn't train in combat techniques. How was he supposed to survive? Use chi? Was he supposed to blow enemies away with a single breath? Thinking this, Kevin Schuyler angrily punched the ground. "You old fool! In the celestial realm, Within a hidden palace in an unknown dimension, an old man slowly opened his eyes and gazed into the distance. His gaze was terrifying, as if it could pierce through the entire world, reaching an unfathomable distance. "Heh heh." The old man chuckled, shook his head, closed his eyes again, and said no more. In truth, Kevin Schuyler underestimated himself. His intelligence level was 200, an absolutely rare phenomenon. No, it was unprecedented. Although this intelligence wasn't the conventional kind, it could grow with strength, age, and experience. Yet, Kevin Schuyler appeared to be only about 15 or 16 years old. His performance on the battlefield and during his exploration of Heavenly Emperor's city demonstrated an astonishing ability to comprehend and absorb knowledge. The combat techniques of Mason Carter and Blake Carter were deciphered by him with just a glance. If it weren't for his inability to use spiritual power to control his Kai energy, he might have instantly mastered techniques that others had painstakingly learned. As Kevin Schuyler pondered this, he realized that his energy was the key. For some reason, he couldn't project his spiritual power externally, but the spiritual power within his body was extraordinarily strong. Although various cultivation methods differ, their essence lies in using spiritual power to guide energy circulation through the body's meridians, thereby increasing the flexibility and richness of one's energy. This allows one to quickly mobilize it when needed, forming Kai energy for attacks. However, Kevin Schuyler looked inward and discovered something shocking. He had no meridians. His body lacked the so-called meridian system. Instead, there were vortex-like holes scattered throughout his body. These holes seemed to support his structure, with bones lying beneath them. Could this be why he couldn't use spiritual power? Why was his body so different? The thought made Kevin Schuyler feel a sudden wave of fear. Energy. Wait, could it be that I need to use energy to replace spiritual power in controlling my strength? But without spiritual power, how can I manipulate the surrounding energy? Kevin Schuyler examined the vortexes on his body, and finally had an epiphany. When these vortexes activated, their ability to absorb energy from the environment was likely no less effective than spiritual power. Moreover, the immense spiritual power within him could manipulate the energy flow once it entered his body. Realizing this, Kevin Schuyler, despite his unhealed injuries, excitedly stood up and slowly raised his right hand. His spiritual power was terrifyingly immense and seemingly endless. While he couldn't project it outward, he had absolute control over it within his body. Under the guidance of his spiritual power, the vortex in his palm began to rotate slowly. Just as Kevin Schuyler had predicted, the surrounding air seemed to follow the vortex's motion and was drawn into his body. This made things much simpler. His overwhelming spiritual power compressed the massive energy flow, channeling the strength within his dantian, Kevin Schuyler's core essence, into the energy stream. To an observer, Kevin Schuyler's palm would appear to host a small vortex of energy, with ripples of energy undulating in the surrounding air. Someone uninformed might mistake this for a magician gathering magical power, or a martial artist executing a powerful combat technique. Kevin Schuyler immersed himself in the sensation of the world's energy flowing into his body. When his spiritual power slightly waned, the vortex at his head automatically began to spin. At that moment, Kevin Schuyler finally experienced the exhilaration of having everything around him under his control. Even without spiritual power, Kevin Schuyler could perceive his surroundings through the flow of energy. He no longer needed to rely on spiritual power to sense the world. The energy streams alone sufficed. At this moment, Kevin Schuyler's spiritual energy was replenished once again. Could it be that his spiritual energy was inexhaustible? However, just as Kevin Schuyler prepared to activate his other hand, he realized he was mistaken. His brain already felt a bit fatigued, unable to replenish any further. Kevin Schuyler decided to stop, instead happily focusing energy on his right hand. But Kevin Schuyler was unaware that, as this was his first time attempting such a thing, he lacked experience and control. Inside his body, he could still rely on his immense spiritual energy to maintain balance, but what would happen once it left his body? Sure enough, not long after, Kevin Schuyler realized the gathered energy had become overwhelmingly powerful, and even his spiritual energy was beginning to lose control. What could he do now? The vortex in his right hand continued to spin relentlessly, absorbing energy from the heavens and earth, yet he was on the verge of losing control. Kevin Schuyler thought to himself, it was time to unleash his first true combat technique. He pushed all his essence energy into the vortex, merging it with the heavenly energy he had absorbed. Unexpectedly, they fused into one unified force. Anyone else witnessing this would surely be astonished. Such heavenly energy didn't even require refining and fused directly. The vortex in Kevin Schuyler's right hand greedily absorbed everything. Opening his eyes, Kevin Schuyler leaped into the air and struck the ground with his palm. He had no other choice. At this moment, he couldn't hold back any longer. The surging power was completely beyond his control. Kevin Schuyler was well aware of the consequences of unleashing his full strength. The crater from his last outburst at the power training field served as a clear reminder. This time, it might awaken those nearby, and he would need to flee quickly to avoid anyone discovering it was his doing. The alley was about 5 meters wide, so it shouldn't damage anyone's homes. With this thought, Kevin Schuyler hesitated no longer. If this first attempt succeeded, mastering it in the future could make him an unstoppable force. A terrifying ripple descended from midair, striking the ground. All the energy, a fusion of Kevin Schuyler's essence, and the heavenly energy absorbed by the vortex in his right hand, erupted outward. What Kevin Schuyler hadn't expected, what he absolutely hadn't anticipated, was that this single strike of his nearly cost him his life. Boom! Before even touching the ground, the massive potential energy unleashed by Kevin Schuyler had already blown away the sand and dust, causing the surrounding walls to collapse under its overwhelming force. Seeing the walls crumble like tofu, Kevin Schuyler immediately realized he had caused a major disaster. Boom! A deafening explosion echoed across half of Heavenly Emperor City, specifically in the southeast corner. Amidst a time of strict law enforcement, how could such a massive explosion occur? From afar, people could only see a giant mushroom-shaped light gradually expanding, radiating a dazzling brilliance. In the dead of night, this light appeared even more extraordinary. Kevin Schuyler almost fainted. This time, he was in serious trouble. The energy's recoil had sent him flying into the air. He should have been able to control it, preventing this from happening. All it required was using the recoil to leap away to a safe distance before the energy detonated. However, soaring nearly 100 meters into the air, Kevin Schuyler, gravely injured, closed his eyes and thought to himself, "This is it, it's over." His body, like a leaf blown away by the wind, began plummeting straight down. If he fell like this, he would undoubtedly be crushed to pieces, and the explosion below had yet to subside. Chapter 8. A new combat model. Inside the City Lord's residence of Heavenly Emperor City, a tall, imposing middle-aged man with black hair, black eyes, thick eyebrows, a straight nose, and a square jaw suddenly opened his eyes. He wore a golden robe and a dragon emperor crown, exuding a natural aura of authority. His terrifying gaze pierced the sky, and the depth in his eyes revealed extraordinary combat prowess. With his hands clasped behind his back and his face turned upward toward the heavens, this man was none other than Philip Lawrence, the City Lord of Heavenly Emperor City. He was in the Imperial Palace, inside a room spanning 100 square meters. Though it was the Emperor's chamber, it wasn't overly luxurious.
A simple jade bed was placed at the far end, and outside a large window lay a spacious balcony. Various plants grew on the balcony, and a sunflower that had lost its daytime brilliance was now fast asleep. The chirping of insects narrated the joy of summer. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared in midair, as if it had always been there, unseen by others.
Your Majesty, there has been a major explosion in Zone C2-23, with an estimated blast radius of about 100 square meters. Since this area is near the outskirts, the population is sparse. So far, 5 bodies have been discovered. According to investigations, it appears to be an accidental explosion. When the Shadow Division arrived at the scene, there were no other traces. The specific cause is currently being investigated in coordination with Captain Yu.
The city lord seemed not to hear, and continued gazing at the sky. After a long pause, he finally spoke.
It has been a long time since such an incident occurred in Heavenly Emperor City. I do not believe this was an accident. Instruct you to uncover the truth within 3 days and report back to me. Additionally, order Overlord to reorganize the Heavenly Guardian Legion and prepare them for mobilization. Understood.
The shadow disappeared once again into the night, as if it had never been there. Under the moonlight, the city lord's residence returned to its tranquil state. Philip Lawrence furrowed his brows. Heavenly Emperor City had been peaceful for a long time. Could this incident become the spark for war? Kevin Schuyler, too, had not anticipated that his outburst would ignite the flames of a 3-nation war. From this moment on, the island would no longer know peace. The long-awaited conflict was about to erupt, and only through war could people grow. Kevin Schuyler was too naive. What he truly needed was the tempering fire of war. Heavenly Emperor City Intelligence Testing Center. The elder in charge of the examination looked at the naked man lying on the bed before him. The man had a slender build, pale skin, and shoulder-length hair that had been scorched, emitting a burnt smell. A large wound on his chest had been bandaged, but his body was still covered with injuries. Beside the elder stood a shadowy figure, somewhat resembling the one outside Philip Lawrence's chamber. However, upon closer inspection, this shadowy figure, though entirely cloaked in black garments, revealed a well-defined chest and hips, indicating she was a woman. She observed the man's body without any sign of abnormality, and her eyes showed no emotional fluctuation, as if she were merely a puppet.
Sai, you've only been away for a few days, and already caused such a massive explosion. If you stayed on this island for a few more years, I fear the entire place would be turned upside down.
The elder was quite frustrated. Even with his extraordinary spiritual power, he couldn't penetrate Kevin Schuyler's body in the slightest. It was as though it were a forbidden zone. Any spiritual energy he sent in disappeared like a stone sinking into the ocean, leaving no trace.
Grandfather, this is the item I found when I saved him. It seems to have saved his life.
The young woman offered the heaven-born Fang to the elder.
Oh, this ordinary black blade saved his life?
The elder experimented with it, and the result was the same. His spiritual energy couldn't detect any fluctuation from it. It was indeed just an ordinary blade. Moreover, compared to a typical warrior's weapon, it seemed even cruder. Though the blade was flawless, and its tip was strangely eerie, there was absolutely no energy flow within it. However, when the elder infused Kai energy into it, he discovered the blade absorbed his Kai energy at an incredibly fast rate. He had no way to examine it further.
Are you saying that when he launched an attack, there was no Kai energy fluctuation at all? Yes, grandfather. At that moment, I sensed a strong energy fluctuation around him, but it truly wasn't his own Kai energy. I see. So he attacks purely using aura? Grandfather, this man doesn't possess extraordinary spiritual power, nor does he have overwhelming Kai energy. Why then do you, Diana Blake, you've asked too many questions already. Yes. Although I cannot examine the inside of his body, I can still judge that he's fine. Once he wakes up, take him to Ling Thought University to study. Yes. Though the shadow figure was clearly perplexed, they still agreed. Kevin Schuyler woke up, or rather, to be precise, he hadn't fully awakened yet. However, he could feel the sensations within his body, though he remained oblivious to the happenings outside. Finally, Kevin Schuyler understood the method of his combat abilities. No wonder that old man had said, "If you want to survive, you must learn to use energy." The spiritual force within Kevin Schuyler's body flowed freely, as if it were a fish in water. Every part of his body was meticulously tended to by this force. The three essence spheres in his dantian emitted their own distinct light, quietly suspended there. At the moment, Kevin Schuyler could only use his spiritual force to manipulate the golden essence sphere. But why was his attack purple in color? Kevin Schuyler couldn't figure out the answer, so he decided to let it go. Seeing whirlpools all over his body, Kevin Schuyler couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Huh? As Kevin Schuyler's spiritual force roamed throughout his body, he noticed that the whirlpool in the palm of his right hand was spinning on its own. The surrounding energy from heaven and earth was being drawn into the center of the whirlpool. Kevin Schuyler speculated silently. It seemed that the whirlpool had the function of storing and releasing energy. Under the command of his spiritual force, he could control its operation. However, given his current state, Kevin Schuyler's control wasn't very refined. Of course, this was expected. It was his first attempt. But with his intelligence, Kevin Schuyler believed this wouldn't remain a problem for long. Why hadn't he fully awakened yet? No, more importantly, why couldn't he control his body? Ah! Kevin Schuyler finally noticed a massive wound on his chest. When his spiritual force reached the area, the wound was slowly closing. It appeared that his inability to control his body stemmed from this injury. But why wasn't he feeling any pain despite the severity of the wound? At that moment, the purple essence sphere in his dantian automatically released a liquid-like substance without the need for spiritual force to activate it. As the liquid reached his chest, the wound began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Kevin Schuyler quickly deduced that the purple essence sphere had healing properties. With a thought, he directed a surge of the liquid toward his chest. In just a moment, the wound had fully healed internally, though the exterior still showed signs of injury. As Kevin Schuyler's spiritual force retreated, his mind regained control over his body. His eyes suddenly snapped open, faint purple light flickering within them. Kevin Schuyler looked at the simple bed in front of him. Clearly, this was the room where he had previously undergone an intelligence test. It seemed he had returned here. Could it be that the old man had saved him? On the table lay a pouch of gold coins and a note that read, "Go to university and enroll. Consider this pouch a loan from me." Kevin Schuyler stepped out of the room. In truth, he already knew there was no one nearby. Now, Kevin Schuyler understood that while he couldn't project his spirit outward, he could sense everything around him by controlling the whirlpool in his mind. This created a spherical field with a radius of about 10 meters, centered on his head. Moreover, he could clearly feel that the whirlpools in various parts of his body were closely connected to the one in his mind. Kevin Schuyler glanced at the heaven-born Fang hanging on the wall. He bowed respectfully toward the inner room, took the blade in hand, and left without looking back. Kevin Schuyler thought to himself, he still wasn't accustomed to his own fighting style. He feared that enrolling in school right now wouldn't teach him much, and competing with so many other students felt bothersome just thinking about it. It would be better to continue completing missions. He decided to take the bag of gold for now, planning to return it to the old man who had tested his intelligence later. With that thought, Kevin Schuyler headed to the military office.
In truth, he had realized that he seemed to possess the ability to remember things after just a single glance. He walked straight to Zone D, casually grabbed a scroll, registered it without even looking, and then walked out. However, as soon as Kevin Schuyler stepped out of the door, he regretted it. The mission is to escort the third young lady of the Sterling family from East City to Thunderstead Village, which isn't far north of Heavenly Emperor City. The reward is the young lady's handkerchief. Kevin Schuyler was speechless. He immediately turned back. A mission like this was truly absurd. Just as he turned around, a beautiful figure blocked his way. Wait! A petite, graceful young woman with stunning features stood before him, spreading her arms to stop him. She had an alluring figure, wore a t-shirt and short shorts, and her ponytail swayed slightly. A small, soft sword hung at her waist, and a jade pendant adorned her forehead. The diamond-shaped jade symbol in the center indicated her noble status.